What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 107 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight, we're going to talk about UFC 279, the pay-per-view nobody wanted. I'm still not certain it's even worth paying for, but people tell me Nate Diaz is fighting, and so therefore we should pay for it. We're gonna take you through the whole card. We'll go over it. There's some decent spots here. As usual, you got me, John at MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags, and Luke at SWR_betting. So guys, if you like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. It would really help us. We'd really like to get to 1,000 subs by the end of the year so we can hit the ground next year running. And we can get right into it. Luke, do you have any thoughts here? Any high level, anything you're looking forward to more than anything else?
Well, I did bite the bullet. I bought the tickets. I am going to the card on Saturday. I want to see my boy Nate. Unfortunately, he's probably going to get emasculated, which we'll get into. But I'm a huge Chimaev truther too, so I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting scenario from a fan perspective, at least. I'm a huge Aldana truther. I'm a huge Tony Ferguson fan, so I'm like, fuck this shit or whatever.
So you're gonna wear a Nate shirt then?
I don't think I have it. Well, no, I think I have
like a Diaz Army or something.
I think I have Nick Diaz. I think I have Nick. I think I have Nick Diaz. So I'm probably I'm probably just gonna wear it and then just like take my shirt off as he gets like fucking grounded.
I feel like there's gonna be more Nate fans than Chimaev fans, right? I'd imagine. Yeah. So, Legs, what do you think? Anything on the card that's interesting?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like how you touched on. I don't think it's like worthy of a pay-per-view status. I mean, 280 is unreal, but yeah, I mean, we'll get into it.
Yeah, 280 is card of the year on paper anyway. But yeah, I mean, let's just jump right in. 13 fights late. First fight of the night, we got Darian Weeks. He's taking on Johan. I think is it Lioness or Lioness? I never get that right. Lioness. Okay. I bet Darian Weeks here at -125. That number's still out there. Honestly, I see a lot of love for Lioness this week, and to be honest, I guess on some level I understand it because obviously Johan hasn't, or obviously Darian Weeks hasn't exactly massively impressed in the UFC. Came in there, close fight, Brian Barberena in his first fight. Last fight got thoroughly beaten up by Ian Gary. But I kind of think that belies like what he actually is. Like, look, Brian Barberena just knocked out Robbie Lawler. I think he's won 4 fights in a row. The guy's a legit established welterweight. Like, having a very, very close fight with him is nothing that's to be upset about. And obviously, Ian Gary has kind of a similar style to Weeks in terms of his striking in the counter game. He's just longer, faster, and a lot better. And so him getting neutralized there, again, not really surprising. And so I don't put that much stock in those fights. And then you have Lioness, who, frankly, I don't know what the guy is. He obviously hits hard, but he seems to be almost the epitome of a KO or bust guy. It's like every single fight, even dating back to his early regional days, he's gassed out 4 minutes into the fight. He throws 100% into everything he throws. He's very hittable. I don't think he sets up much well. He's not a great grappler. So while I understand why people, kind of like him because, Weeks is pretty mid and, this guy knocks out a lot of guys, I honestly think Weeks is going to have plenty of opportunities to have success here. I've seen people talk about Weeks' pace being poor, but the truth of the matter is, Weeks' pace is actually quite high with Barberena. He's the kind of guy that because he likes to counter, he's going to kind of bring that pace that you bring to him. And so I think he'll be able to keep pace with Lioness, no problem. And I think he's going to be able to counter Lioness' face-off all fight. And the truth of the matter is, while I think the narrative being propagated is, Weeks needs to survive 7 minutes, bet him live. I don't disagree. Like, yes, I would bet him live for 7 minutes even if he's losing. I'm not really convinced that he's going to lose the early part of this fight. The check left hook he throws is going to be there all day long. I kind of think if he doesn't get caught, he's going to win minutes here from the very beginning of this fight. So, I think he should be closer to -180 range in this fight. I have a unit and a half on him. Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, to me, these round one or bust guys are just so tough to ever really want to put money on just because it's the cardio is just such a massive red flag. And that's kind of what you're getting with Lioness. The guy's got big power, got a little bit of wrestling upside while he's fresh, but he's got cardio for about 7.5 minutes maybe. So, yeah, slight favorite Weeks makes sense to me.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I've never been a big Lioness guy. Like, I don't have a bet on Weeks in this fight just because, honestly, I still don't. There's a decent amount of tape out there on him, but I still don't know what to fully make of who Darian Weeks is personally, which is ultimately why I'm staying away. But I've just never been a big Lioness guy. Like, I bet Justin Burlinson against him on the Contender Series, who I still think is a decent prospect, although I think he just got recently knocked out in Cage Warriors again. So maybe you have to pump the brakes a little bit on that one. But I did bet Gabe Green against him around evens, largely under the pretense that, Gabe Green's a tough guy. He's got pretty consistent pace. He's got cardio. If he can survive, almost didn't. Honestly, probably lost like the first 7.5 minutes of that fight pretty clean. But that's the thing with Lioness. I mean, I think you summed it up well, John. Like, he just kind of loads everything into his shots. Like, I don't think he's a particularly technical striker by any means. I think he's probably easily counterable. I don't know what to make of Darian Weeks at this point. To say he's not durable, though, I mean, there's no evidence to suggest that he's not. So that's where I'm more on the weak side, that I think he can eat the shots of Lioness, but I guess I am more so on the crowd of I guess I would look to bet him live personally.
Do you guys think Lioness is a good athlete? I was having this conversation with someone this week, and it's kind of the crux of why I'm going Weeks pre and not. And well, I mean, obviously, I'm willing to add to him live, but then the crux of why I'm going pre is I don't actually think he's that explosive. Like I just think he's a guy who throws 100% power into everything. Do you guys think I'm off with that?
I don't know. The guy seems like somewhat athletic. But yeah, no, I mean, you're not wrong with him throwing 100% into everything.
I honestly, I think the guy's a fucking bum, to be honest. I just don't know if Darian Weeks is anything either. I really don't.
Fair enough. Moving on. Interesting women's fight here. Elise Reed coming off of being absolutely butchered by Sam Page. Was happy to cash that one. Fighting Melissa Martinez, Melly as she is called. She's coming off combate. She's had about a 2-year layoff. She's undefeated, and she's making her UFC debut here. Lags, what are your thoughts on this fight?
It's a pretty low-level women's fight, to be honest with you, and I expect it to be fairly close, competitive, striking fight that goes 15, to be honest. There's not a ton on the Martinez side. Like, strength schedule is not great. She's not a great striker. She has poor defensive grappling similar to Reed. I don't expect either girl to really land takedowns here. I just expect it to be a close fight going the distance, to be honest with you. So, to be honest, I don't hate the people taking the Reed shot, but it will not be for me.
Luke, I mean,
I understand the Reed shot, but honestly, after watching the tape, I just think Martinez is a better striker, to be honest. But it's another one of these spots where you have a chick who's under 25 with less than 10 pro fights coming in as being favored. We've seen this shit go wrong. I don't know how many times, but I've just always been vocal about I don't think Elise Reed is really any good. Obviously, there's the layoff too. I mean, we haven't seen this chick in 3 years, right? So I think there's like two ways you can look at it from one perspective, right? Like, she's got a 3-year layoff, ring rust, that shit, or that we haven't seen her in 3 years and that she's 22, she's 25 now. She could have gotten a shitload better in that time frame. And what I will say from a slight also narrative perspective, that people say, well, she just has not done fuck all of anything in the last 3 years. She actually went out there and won a kickboxing world title back in 2021. So, the girl has been at least active in terms of competing in the combat sports. But I just don't like what I've seen from either girl on bottom either. Both are very defensively liable. Both are defensively void. I'm not really convinced. Homegirl Mexican chick even won her last fight. I think she might have actually lost that fight.
Dude, that was a robbery.
Yeah, I scored the fight for Lioness personally. But it's just, like I said, it's one of those weird spots where you get someone who goes from 22 to 25 where you've been seen. I mean, you can see just massive leaps from them at the same time. But even what I've seen, I still think she's a better striker than Reed personally. But like, I think it's probably a competitive fight at the same time. I mean, Reed's going to move a lot. The thing with Homegirl is that, girls have largely had to stand in front of her. That's where she had to succeed. Reed, historically not a girl that's going to go ahead and stand in front of you. So I get it. I get the dog shot. To me, it's just utter complete pass. Lots of question marks.
Yeah, I mean, I took the dog shot. Small bet, only a unit on Elise Reed plus 146. I'm not, to be honest, there's a part of me that has some buyer's remorse about it, even though the fight hasn't even happened yet. But in part because of what you said, Luke, like when I taped the fight, I didn't realize it was 3 years ago was the last time she fought, which at Martinez's age is kind of a big concern because to your point, I don't. I obviously I bet Sam Page against Elise Reed in her last fight. I'm not really a huge Elise Reed fan at all, and, but I think we're getting some feedback here. But with that being the case, though, it's still hard for me to put this line much past evens. Reed isn't very good, but she's a decent striker. I think I'd classify her as a UFC caliber striker, I guess, for females anyway. The big issue with Reed is just, her grappling is horrendous. But to your point, Luke, Melly Martinez is not really a grappler. The couple times I've seen her on top, she doesn't really look like she knows what to do. When I've seen her on bottom, she actually looks far worse than Reed there. I actually kind of think there's some scope for Reed to get on top here and have big success. I know she mentioned in some interviews that she had been training wrestling for this fight. I don't rate Reed's wrestling, but I have seen her get on top of women with decent guards and actually look okay. I don't want to say good, but okay from that position. And like if she's okay there, like if she gets on top here, I think she can have big success. I'd have a lot more confidence if Melly's last Combate fight was 6 months ago and not 3 years ago. But nonetheless, I respect the output of Martinez and the boxing. I think she should have better output, but I think she's very, very counterable. Reed's going to be able to walk her onto that right hand a lot, I think. And I also just don't really like the way Martinez exits the pocket. So, I mean, ultimately, I think both women are somewhat live to finish on the feet here. I think there's obviously a huge competition and experience edge for Reed in this fight. And I think she has the grappling upside here. So I'm taking the small poke, but I can't really. I don't disagree with you guys that maybe this was one worth passing. We'll see what happens though. Moving on though, we got a good fight. We got Chad and Helger coming off a win over Jesse Strader that I think broke my heart. I don't know if it broke your guys' hearts, but I bet Jesse Strader in that fight. He's taking on Hailey Alateng. Luke, what do you think?
Well, I was not on the same play as you were, but it also broke my heart as I was on the other 2.5 in that fight. God damn. Lost that one by like a minute or so. Interesting fight to me. I know that I think either you or maybe Danny also have a pretty strong position on. Honestly, I went into thinking that I was going to bet Alateng, and I came away with a pass completely on the money line. Here's the thing with me in this fight. Like, Alateng has the tools to exceed value in this fight, but is he going to fucking maximize those? I don't really think so. I mean, he might, but we talk about his wrestling background. Well, what has he done in the UFC? He's shot no extensive takedowns outside of the third rounds in 2 of his fights. So you have no consistent trajectory of the guy to go out there and shoot takedowns round to round over 15 minutes. He's never done it once, right? Obviously, that's the clear path against a guy like Helger, who's historically struggled on the ground and submitted in all 5 of his pro offices. That's where Gafarov had success. That's where other guys have had success. Even he stand in the fight that most of us have not been able to view. He was getting out wrestled in that fight as well, right? Like, so the path is there for Alateng. Like, just fucking wrestle, dude. But like, are you going to do that? And it's like, if he doesn't, listen, the guy hits hard. The guy's got some pop. He's got some aggression. There's no doubt about it. But it's like, his pacing is pretty inconsistent. I think Helger's pacing is more consistent than his. I think his footwork is a bit better. Granted, Alateng's fought a much better brand of competition. That needs to be noted too. But it's like, put it this way, like, if you tell me that Alateng is going to do what he has done throughout the course of his career, he's not going to wrestle round to round. He's going to sit here and box for the large body of 15 minutes. Am I laying minus 170 on him? Fuck no. No, I'm just not. I'm sorry. I'm not. But what I do think is a good look is the over 2.5 at minus 170. I think both guys are pretty durable. And Helger's been submitted in all of his pro losses, but Haley's more of a grinder than anything. Both guys have shown they can take a shot. Probably going to be a high action fight, so it's going to be sweaty in some capacity. But take the variance out. Hey, Lee fighting like an idiot. Give me the over.
Yeah, I mean, I bet Alateng here. Honestly, in general, Haley is a guy that like I largely am looking to fade because to all the points you hit, Luke, he is an incredibly negative fighter. Obviously, obviously his work rate has been suspect at times throughout his career in the UFC, or at all times, I should say. He's actually been outlanded for his career in the UFC. And like you said, he doesn't wrestle as much as he should, despite being a decent wrestler. And so betting him always makes me uncomfortable, especially betting him as a favorite. But I look at this fight and it's just, at some point, being good at mixed martial arts matters. And whether or not you've been negative or not, like the guy's got an above 500 record in the UFC. He beat Danal Bakaro by decision. He's beaten every guy he has fought in the UFC would be a decent sized favorite against Chen and Helger, in my opinion. There's just such a huge gap in terms of their actual raw abilities. Alateng's fast. He hits hard. He's a much better wrestler. He's a much better technical striker. He's younger. He's fought way better competition. And like on the Chad side, you have a 35-year-old man with poor knees who's kind of relied on winning a bunch of regional fights. And then even the straighter fight, kind of pulling finishes out of his ass. And now he's fighting a guy who is very, very durable, who he's very likely not going to finish here, where he's at a massive wrestling disadvantage, a massive speed advantage, a massive power advantage. It's like, could he get by and just volume Alateng? I suppose I shouldn't even say I suppose. Yes, that is in theory the way Helger wins this fight. But in my opinion anyway, I just don't think that happens at a 40% clip. We have a guy that I just don't believe is UFC level fighting a guy who's actually a very talented fighter who's just kind of fights in a pretty negative style. I have to bet Alateng here. I think he's very, very clearly the side. Look, this guy was 40 seconds away from losing to Jesse Strader, who is like a mid-regional LFA guy. He's not even like a high regional guy, Yeah, I have 2 units on Alateng minus 155. Lags, what do you think?
Real quick, John, though, but like this is very antithetical to the MMA Fox. You just said I'm betting on a guy who just is like negatively processed at chalk.
I am, dude. I am. You're right. The thing is, it's like if I fought Haley Alateng, could you make a case for me out voluming him? I'm not saying at Helger who's like as bad at MMA as I am, but it's like we have a guy who should not be in the UFC, in my opinion, who is not even close to UFC level, fighting a much better athlete and a guy who is very much UFC level from a talent perspective.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying I'm not even like deflecting to you. I'm saying for myself personally, when there's someone at this price, like it's not like heavy chalk or anything where he's like minus 170, like, but if he's going to fight like negative EV so much, like I'm not like running to the window to do it. That's just my point. That's just my point.
Fair, but couldn't you imagine like a scenario where it's like Alateng gets outlanded by 20 strikes, but easily wins a decision just because he's rocking at Helger every time he hits him?
Or Alateng doesn't do anything and Allinger just dances around him, kicks him, pot shots him, competitive on volume. It's close.
I will vomit if that happens, but it could happen.
Dissension on the podcast. I'm sorry.
No. You guys are good. I love it because to be honest with you, I don't have a ton to say because I'm more on the Luke side as well. Like I came out of tape like if he had a little bit more urgency in the wrestling or a little bit more volume on the feet, I would look to lay like you said, this kind of heavy chalk, but I just don't at minus 170 have much interest.
Yeah, fair. Moving on though, we have this fight's another fucking mess. It's unbelievable. This card is like a pay-per-view. Like just unbelievable. We got Norma Dumont taking on 1-0 Danielle Wolf. Big Norm is currently minus 400. Things I never thought I'd hear myself say in the UFC. What's funny? It's like I had actually thought there was like this elite boxing background from Wolf because that's what I've been told and that's what they sold you on in Contenders. But then I was talking to Trotman the other day, and he was like, no, this woman was not good enough to be a pro boxer. That's why she went to MMA. Like, she was a very middling boxer. And then you watch the tape, and it's like, yeah, all she really has is a jab. She doesn't really throw combinations. She's 38 years old. She has a jab, and she has size. I will say in her Contenders fight, she did look reasonably strong in the clinch. But then the one time she ended up on bottom, she looked lost. She looked lost whenever Tennant on Contenders kind of took the fight to her. Like, the only good thing I can say on the Wolf side is she's had 2 years off. So I would expect some improvements here since, we last saw her. But at the end of the day, she has one MMA fight. I don't rate Dumont at all. I've faded her and lost money fading her over and over and over again. And then, of course, bet her live against Chiasson and lost money betting her live against Chiasson as well. But Dumont really, I don't know. I tried to convince myself there was an angle on Wolf. But honestly, if Dumont just kind of stays aggressive here, she shouldn't have any problems at all. Like, it would be very hard for me to believe that in 2 years off, like, regardless of the improvements Wolf makes, that she could possibly make enough to really compete here. Am I running to the window to lay minus 400 on Norma Dumont? No, but honestly, she should win however she pleases. What do you think, Legs?
I think the issue for me with Norma is just like she just doesn't do much really. Like, there's just not much to love about her game. She's just super meh. And it's funny you mentioned Wolf is 38. She actually turns 39 tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, her boxing isn't that great, personally, from what I've seen on the Contender Series. There's only that one fight really we have to go off of. I think this is a squash match for Dumont, personally.
Luke, how about you?
Sorry, my dog's going ham on her new toys right now. So she has a hippo in her mouth right now, so I'm trying to keep her down. I'm kind of with Legs, though, from some perspective. Like, that's my only issue with her, at least in relation to this price tag, is that there's just been a lot of patient components with her. But at the same time, I really do think it's like a levels fight. Like, Dumont, brown belt versus white belt on paper. I think she's more technical. If she just does things when she strikes, I think she's fine. If she attempts takedowns, I think she makes this looks probably pretty easy. Someone with one pro fight who was getting hurt significantly by Tanisha Tennant, who did get passed by Tanisha Tennant. Dumont shouldn't have issues in this fight. To me, it comes down to, is Dumont going to make this fight more difficult than it needs to be? It is really all it comes down to for me. But as you know, and if people have been listening to this podcast outside of your bets, John, too, and mine, we have not been the biggest Dumont supporters on this podcast because I still think she is overrated. I don't think she's anything fucking special. But so you're taking on a girl with one pro fight. Take the fucking girl down, submit her. Like,
do you think
she really should not have much issue doing this?
Do you think Dumont ITD?
Yeah, I saw Tim's comment there. So it's currently at plus 200 for ITD.
Honestly, well, if the fight doesn't go the distance, is like plus 150. I'm gonna have
plus 175.
I'm gonna have a healthy size bet on that because I think it's one of those spots kind of like not diametrically similar, but to like a Ricky Simone, Gaetano Perello, Ricky Simone, historic grinder, blah, 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 blah. He can't finish the fight. You're getting a very favorable price on the fight to finish because this guy doesn't finish, but massive skill gap at the end of the day. I think this is one of those spots where the books and general public are like, meh, this girl can't finish a ham sandwich. But it's like, you also have to look at the girls who she's fighting, despite me being lower on Dumont. It's like I think she's fought like nobody lower than a purple belt BJJ status at the end of the day. She's fighting a girl with one pro fight. These are these spots where you have to like separate yourself. No, I think violence, coupled with the fact it's women's 145. We're not talking about the toothpicks, at 115 or anything. Like, girls can finish fights or whatever. So this at plus money, I think, is a great play.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that because, like, if Dumont's price tag at minus 400 is right, then the under 2.5 can't be plus 175 here, right? And if she fights optimally, she should really finish her pretty quickly, if we're being honest. Yeah, I kind of like that as well. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, it got steamed too because I think it opened like minus 125 on the over.
People bet the over.
Yeah, you either think like I think I'd rather have a Wolf ticket at plus 350 than an over minus 210 ticket, to be honest.
Yeah, so it looks like the over opened at minus 185, and it's now minus 215, minus
Okay, so not as
225.
much as I thought. But either way, though, I just because if you really believe this is going the distance, then you must believe Dumont's not getting significant top time and not really trying to grapple her. And if
So
that's
Wolf is
happening,
live.
yeah, then you should be betting Wolf, right? I mean, that's yeah. I'm with you guys. Moving on, though. Oh, what a fight. Lags, I know you would bet here. We got Jake Collier. He's taking on Chris Barnett. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, similar to Big Norm in the last fight, I think this should be pretty easy work for Jake Collier in this fight. I have one unit on the under 2.5 at plus 100. I mean, I think Barnett, in terms of his win equity, I think it's kind of land some kind of spinning shit, some kind of random meme kind of KO early. I think the pace of Collier is going to be too much for him personally on the feet. Solid attritional work, solid boxing. I think if he mixes in the grappling, I think it makes this under look 10 times as easier. So love the under plus money.
Luke, how about you?
Honestly, nothing to say here. There's all the hipster takes or whatever. Oh, Jake Collier is minus 300. He's minus 400 in MMA fight.
I think it could look wider.
And all these motherfuckers are also not betting homeboy Chris Barnett, which I think is also interesting because we see that these type of takes on Twitter all the time. You're sitting there taking barbs, but they're not betting the other side. It's like, all right, you just contradict yourself there. Jake Collier should not have any issues in this fight. He really shouldn't. Chris Barnett's a meme. The only reason he was in the UFC is because, homeboy Rothwell had like 3 fights canceled prior to that. So like, hey, we're now digging down 3 layers deep to get somebody to fight Ben fucking Rothwell. Here's Chris Barnett. That's why Chris Barnett is in the UFC. He's 5'9". He's fat. He sucks. He's out of shape. He does nothing well outside of throwing spinning shit. You can say what you want about Jake Collier. Jake Collier is an established mid-tier heavyweight, right? Who, in my opinion, just beat Andre Arlovsky. You can say what you want on Arlovsky. Not an easy guy to look good against, right? Jake Collier is going to fucking kill him. Jake Collier is going to kill him.
Yeah, I'm pretty upset with myself that I didn't tape this soon enough because I actually would have laid the minus 300 on Collier had I taped it earlier in the week. I actually kind of think they should be around minus 500 or so. Yeah, like Lag said, I think Barnett needs a very early KO and needs something fluky. I think Collier is going to absolutely put it on him. I don't have a lot else to say. I have also bet the under 2.5 at minus 115. Look, I know Collier not really known for being a prolific finisher, but watch Chris Barnett fights. Like he comes out like a blaze, and when that blaze goes out about 2 minutes in, he tends to snowball very, very, very quickly and then just melt. And Collier does do a lot of body work. I know people have like talked shit about his power, but the guy rocked Vellante a couple times. He obviously finished Chase Sherman. He could probably sub Barnett here if he wants to. I think the under should probably, I mean, given the pace we're going to see combined with just how bad Barnett's cardio is, I think the under should definitely be around minus 150 to minus 185 range here. Yeah, I still can't figure out how I lost my Vellante bet against Chris Barnett, if I'm being completely honest. Still pains me to this day. Moving on, though, we got Jake Pickett, the Night Wolf. He's taking on Dennis Talulin. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, this is the fight on the card I probably really have no real opinion on. I think Pickett's just been so consistently inconsistent. I think if Pickett just wrestles, throws strikes, has better cardio, there you go. Talulin struggled with combat sambo-based guys, but he has power. He's going to be aggressive. So if Pickett's not going to do shit in this fight, I think there's your path there. But I think there's a better chance for Jamie Pickett maximizing his win equity in this fight because I do think he has more tools. I think he's fought the better guys. He's shown in at least some capacity that he's been durable. He's fought 2 guys like Tefan, homeboy Puna, who hit pretty hard and has stayed conscious in those fights. So, if he can be active, do things, not die. I think Pickett should win this fight, but I don't trust Jamie Pickett as far as I can throw him, to be honest. I just don't at this point. So Pickett, like, decision is my pick, but complete pass for me.
Yeah, I really want to bet Pickett, to be honest, but I'm going to pass it, I think. The thing is, it's funny, Lags and I were chatting about this earlier in the week, but like if you go and do the research on Taleb and the guys he's beaten, it is almost comical how bad these guys are. Anytime the guy has fought anyone decent in his entire career to date, he has melted and lost. Pickett obviously has fought much better competition in aggregate and beaten better competition. I think Pickett's probably the better athlete here. He's a bit bigger, a bit more reach. I actually think he could probably have some success wrestling if he wanted to. The thing that just bothers me with Pickett is I feel like he checks out of fights at times. Like the Tafon fight, like even like going back, I bet Pickett in that fight. And afterward, the fight, after I first saw it, I was like, man, that was a bad read. But then you watch Pickett in other fights, and it's like he just kind of wilted and didn't really want to be in there. Like he wanted nothing to do with the pressure that Tafon was bringing to him. And like I just get that vibe from him whenever somebody goes forward on him. And the one thing I can say about Taleb is he will go forward and he does hit pretty hard. I do agree with you, Luke, that Pickett's durable. But the other thing that bothers me is like I actually think Pickett's faster and probably could be the better striker. But he does this thing where it's like instead of like returning to his stance like a normal striker after a strike, he tends to just follow his strikes forward every time and end up in the clinch. It's a bad look optically. It leads to him being in close quarters when he doesn't need to be in there instead of maximizing his reach. So I don't know. Like I think Taleb probably is going to have a couple of chances to hurt him in this fight early, but on the whole, I really think Pickett should be fine here. He's a better athlete. He's a bigger guy. He's fought better competition. He has more tools. I just don't really trust him. Lags, how about you?
Yeah, to your point, like mixing in takedowns, I do think he can mix in takedowns here. Like Taleb's defensive grappling, it doesn't look that great. I don't think his cardio is that great either. In terms of Pickett itself, like to me, I was looking at the props. I think decision only is a smart way to play Pickett. Pickett decision only is -125. I think that's the best way to play him if you're looking to play him personally.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I agree with that. Moving on. Good fight here. We got Jailton Almeida. He's taking on Anton Turkalj. Honestly, I was kind of tempted to bet Turkalj here, or just take a small poke, just because. I mean, we just saw Turkalj on Contenders gain 11 minutes of control and then 11 takedowns in 15 minutes in a 205 fight. Like, there's just not many guys in the 205 division in the world who can kind of put out that kind of pace of wrestling. And that's something that I think is kind of intriguing, especially since Jailton's cardio is still pretty massive unknown. And so I was kind of like, how can he be plus 550 with that dynamic? But then you think about it and it's like, man, I faded this guy in Contender Series against an absolute bum a month ago. Like, I'm really going to turn around and bet him against Jailton Almeida? I don't know. You know, the thing is, if there was some tape with a reasonable grappler on top of him where I could see how he responded to that, I would be a little more comfortable. But I don't know how he's going to respond to that. And he does train in a good wrestling gym. I mean, he's at All-Stars. Obviously, they have some of the best wrestlers in the world right now. But yeah, I'm not eager to get involved. And you know, the truth is, if Jailton just stays standing, he's going to light him up. Turkalj just cannot strike to save his life. Yeah, I don't know. I can see the angle on it just on volume wrestling, but I have a feeling Almeida's just going to squish him. I don't really have any interest. Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, you know, there's not a ton of tape on Turkalj, but like it's mostly a bunch of like tape against regional bums that aren't very good. He takes them down, pounds them out, or submits them fairly easily. I mean, I don't think he's going to have much of any grappling success at all against Almeida. I think, like you said, if he keeps his standing, I mean, the limited tape that you have of Turkalj standing is not pretty. The guy's defensively flawed. I think Almeida could knock him out standing. I think he could take him out, pound him on the floor. Yeah, I like the under 1.5 here. Unit and a half, under 1.5, -155.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, these are fights that I want nothing to fucking do with. We have two guys who there's really not a whole lot out there on. They're killing everybody, little resistance. What I will say for Turkalj is that it was encouraging going at least into the Contender Series fight where, the running gag on him, kill, 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 kill. He went out there and, to your point, John, went out there and Russell fucked the dude for 11 minutes and showed that he does have some cardio. He does have some extended ability in fights. And that's kind of just what, like, my thing with Almeida is, like, we just don't know that, at this point at all. So I'm not trying to make the case for Turkalj necessarily, because I think Jelton's top game just kills him and smothers him, or he knocks him out personally. But when you're sitting there looking to lay that kind of number or parlay that kind of guy when they've shown no overt minute winning ability, you're kind of being a dumb fuck, to be honest with you. So, complete pass for me.
Yeah, fair. Someone asked, Kaiser asked, what about Almeida and Jerry if it happened tomorrow? I don't even think you could potentially line that fight. I think it's a stretch to assume that Jelton's as good on top as Glover is at this point in their careers, to be honest.
I know why Kaiser asked that, because they brought that up in Magic's pod, and Magic said that if they fought tomorrow, Almeida would smoke him inside a round.
I don't. I mean, maybe he is that good, but like Glover literally just spent the better part of a decade butchering top tier 205ers on the mat. Jelton Almeida finished Parker Porter and Danilo Marquez. Like, can we wait and see till he beats a top 15 guy before we start talking about what he would do to Jerry? I'm not going to say no. He obviously looks very good, but I would like to see him beat someone of consequence before talking about how he would do the champion. Moving on, we got a fun one here. This is actually maybe the best fight on the entire card. We got Hakeem Dawodu. He's taking on Julian Erosa. Lags, what are your thoughts?
It's one that I'm just having a tough read on personally. Like, I feel like Erosa could compete in the striking, mix in the grappling as well, but like the dude's so damn hittable. Like the last fight with Peterson was just such a bad look to me that it's like, I think Dawodu's sharp on the counter. The guy's got decent power. I know he's mostly a decision aider, but like Erosa's perfectly a guy that I think he could get a knockout on. So I like the under here. I didn't get on it because it got smoked from plus 150. I think it's like plus 110 now. But no play for me. I love this fight though.
Luke, how are you?
Yeah, I mean, I think violence is a decent look here. I mean, Dawodu, decision machine, can't finish anybody, but you got a guy on a Rosa who's going to sit there and force action, force finishes. I think Dawodu's sharper. He's better. He's more athletic. His takedown defense historically has held up, but also Dawodu hasn't proven to be, completely durable. He got bonked, in his first fight in the UFC club and sub scenario. But I think Rosa is going to get after him, which is why I'm not really willing to lay, over 2-1 on the guy. But I think it actually is going to be a high action based fight that I do think finishes. So I think violence is the way to go.
Yeah, I actually got a bit of that plus 150 on the under here. I actually kind of think it might still be okay at dog money. I guess, as you guys both mentioned, Dawodu known for going to decisions, but I think a large part of that is, he's a counter striker, and that doesn't really get enough credence. The truth is counter strikers are going to put out about as much volume as you enable them to put out. We did just see in his last fight, Dawodu landed 150 significant strikes across 15 minutes. That was new for him, but Trezano tried to come for him and he lit him up. And the one thing that is a certainty with Julian Erosa, or two things. One, he has no defense to his chin. It is constantly up in the air and his hands are down. And two, he is going to hunt you down and come for you. And so I expect, as you guys both said, Erosa is going to take the fight to him, and I expect Dawodu is going to let his hands go. Honestly, I kind of think there might be value on Dawodu. My big concern is just, as you said, Luke, I don't really trust Dawodu's durability, and Juicy is extremely dangerous with just about everything he throws. And so I'm not dying to lay that kind of a price, but I do think this is going to be a super high output fight here. I think this fight finishing should be favored, to be honest. These guys are both going to land a ton of strikes. Erosa's been finished a bunch in his career and finished a bunch of guys. So, yeah, I like under here. Moving on, though, we have Johnny Walker taking on young Cutelaba. Luke, what are your thoughts here?
Holy meme fight. Two guys historically with the meme category, but I know we're probably going to get a little bit of dissension. I don't know. I think a lot of people are going to really disagree with me on this one. I do think this fight goes over. In my opinion, I think that Cutelaba is going to come out here and wrestle. The first guy that Johnny Walker had fought that aggressively wrestled him, homeboy grinded him out. Walker still put up some resistance, not enough resistance to win any sort of minutes overtly, but it extended the fight. So it comes down to, if Cutelaba is going to come out here and chuck hands and do all that shit. But in my opinion, the path to victory is just evidently there for him. I think he's one of the best wrestlers that Johnny Walker's fought. I think we've seen a bit more process from Cutelaba in recent years too. So, I mean, yeah, if he wants to sit there and go out there and swing and have a fight of the night, there you go. But I think his wrestling can go out here and extend minutes, and I think the over at plus money now is interesting.
Luke, Johnny Walker does not have enough of a chin for a fight of the night. But I don't hate the take there. Honestly, I was pretty interested in Cutelaba at the early numbers that were out there at minus 180, but he got steamed and I missed it. I think minus 220, minus 230 range is fair. Yeah, as you mentioned, Walker's fairly easy to take down, but he tends to consolidate guard fairly well. He's not easy to pass. You saw Krylov go 15 minutes with him, and if Nikita Krylov can go 15 minutes with you, I think Jan can as well. I do think both guys are certainly finishable. Both guys also very gassy. I don't have any strong feelings about total one way or another, though, to be honest. I think either guy can obviously finish. But I do just think from, as you mentioned, a process perspective, if Cutelaba does what he's been doing lately and wrestles, he really, maybe he gasses out and gets finished down the stretch, but like Walker, not exactly a cardio king himself. And so I just kind of think Cutelaba can stay safe here if he wants. I think he's probably the side. I'm not really interested in playing it, though. I'm hoping it's an exciting fight. Lags, what do you think?
Yep. So here's where the dissension lies. So I have a unit and a half on the under 1.5 at minus 105. It actually opened at plus 125. I guess what I'll add in terms of the grappling, I think that obviously it could slow down the fight, but we saw him mix in takedowns both in the Jacoby fight and the Clark fight, and he was able to do a shit ton of damage in 10-8 both of those guys in the first round. I don't think that Walker could eat that type of damage if that comes his way. So personally, I think standing, both guys are allowed to knock each other out, and I think if Cutelaba mixes in the wrestling early, the pace early, I think can pound him out on the ground personally. So I like the under 1.5.
Yeah, fair. We'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it, even if, again, not quite a pay-per-view fight that is on a pay-per-view. Moving on, though, Luke, I'll start with you. I know you do have strong feelings here. We got Irene Aldana. She's taking on Mason Chiasson here. What do you think?
I love my Irene Aldana this week. I went into it, thinking kind of just, general mat, pre-line or whatever. They dropped early lines, 150, and I was like, oh, okay, okay, give me some Arena. And I went back and I did more tape, and I love this fight for her. I wouldn't say. Let me rephrase. I don't love. I like this fight for her generally, because I think what people are doing here, at least in terms of the pushback that we've seen with Chiasson, is that the Holly Holm fight, right? Girl gets taken down 5 times, grinded out or whatever. First thing I'll say off the top, homegirl came into that fight with a broken foot. Not an optimal scenario to come into that fight. That's what I'll say. 2, she still stuffed 8 of 13 takedowns and got controlled for less than 5 minutes in that entire fight. It's not like those takedowns came easy. It's not like she got controlled on the mat easy. Wasn't the case. Yeah, she dropped a little bit against Pennington as well. But my big thing here, and I think some people miss this from a general handicapping perspective, is that you have to be fluid with your opinions on fighters as well. Because look at her fight with Kunitskaya, right? Kunitskaya, historically, very strong clinch fighter. That's where Kunitskaya has her historic success. She couldn't do shit to Irene Aldana in that fight. She went out there and beat the fuck out of her. She circled off, dug underhooks, knocked her out. So, yeah, I can see that Macy's big. She's going to force clinches. That's probably what she's going to try to do. My thing is, I don't think she's going to have that kind of success on Aldana historically. And the thing with Macy, what I will say is her range striking has improved in recent years, but she still has the same poor defensive tendencies she always has. When she gets clipped, she forces clinches. She has nothing. There's no footwork. There's no process. There's nothing. And Aldana is going to put a higher level of volume on her that she's never seen before, who can crack, who's a top 5 girl. I don't think Macy has that switch yet. Like I said, when she gets hurt, clinch. She did that to Dumont. Clinch, in a couple other fights. I don't think that auto option is there here. Get cracked by Aldana and try to clinch her. She's going to circle off and she's going to beat the fuck out of you after that too. Coupled with that, we've seen Macy gas in multiple fights too, right? Aldana ain't going to gas. Aldana, even in getting out wrestled by Holland, she didn't gas in that fight. She was still good to go. She just got outclassed at the end of the day. So Macy better hold on for clinched life here, because if she doesn't, I think she's going to get her fucking ass whooped. I think she's going to get vet lessened. I think Macy has gotten better, but at a top 10 level against this type of a girl, here's where the step back comes. Coupled with the fact, like even in her fight with Dumont looked like shit. Dumont missed weight. Dumont didn't perform, right? Props to Macy, can't take anything away from him. Well, Aldana's going to show the fuck up. Dumont didn't show up. Aldana's going to show up. And Aldana's going to whoop her ass if she does not show up. So I love me Serena Aldana. I think she gets an attritional finish in either late second or third round.
Yeah, I have moderate interest in Aldana minus. Well, she's minus 170 right now. I haven't bet it yet. I'm hoping it comes in more. I do have some interest in her. I think most of what you said is on point, Luke. I think Macy's kind of like best hope to win this fight, or her best path probably looks something like the Pennington fight did against Aldana, where she's able to get a ton of clinch time there, maybe drag her down and hold her down. But Macy doesn't really have the best top game ever. I'd be a little surprised if she held her down for long stretches. I also think the market might be pricing in too much grappling upside off the Dumont fight. Obviously, if you've watched the show since its inception, we've been banging home the fact that Dumont is a bad wrestler. It just so happens that none of the people we ever bet against her actually wrestle. So I think that's somewhat of an aberration, whereas Aldana actually has fairly strong takedown defense. I think Macy's going to struggle to get her down. She could get some clinch control time, but I think in space she's going to get beaten up pretty bad here. All the things you said about the striking's right, Luke. Plus, on top of which, if they get into a gunfight, I trust Aldana's durability quite a bit, whereas I don't really trust Macy's. I just think Aldana's got way more finishing upside here. The volume and precision boxing probably gives her pretty heavy decision upside as well. Yeah, I think Aldana's the clear side. Lads, what do you think? Yeah, Luke.
One more quick thing, too. I think that needs to be important to note. Aldana's going to bang body shots in this fight, right? We've seen Macy get tired. We've seen Macy gas. So even if she's able to, clinch up at points, Aldana's going to be just ripping her to the body consistently. So how does Macy's cardio, even if she's able to have, maybe get a takedown, get some clinch grind time, Aldana's ripping her body. I don't think Macy's cardio holds in this fight. I think Aldana's going to whip her ass. That's the last thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was going to mention on too was well, I'll get to that again, I guess, a little bit later. But in terms of like the Chiasson side, like I think you would have to rate her wrestling any type of at any type of caliber really to give her any type of shot here. I think like on the feet, I think Aldana pieces her apart. But what you're talking about with the cardio, this is Macy's first fight back at 135 as well in over like a year and a half. So that's a big talking point, I feel like, as well.
Yeah, fair. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's hard. I shouldn't say it's not. I don't think it's hard to see a path for Macy. It's just like, I think she's going to bring the right game plan. I just have some questions about whether or not she's capable of executing it, Anyway, moving on. We got Kevin Holland taking on Daniel Rodriguez. I'm actually pretty interested in Holland. Again, it's one where it's like I'm looking at the line. I've seen people hype up D-Rod this week, but the line hasn't moved that much. I'm kind of looking for minus 185 to get in. Honestly, I've been a D-Rod guy for most of his career. He has great volume. I like his jab. He's obviously a very good pocket boxer, but I think he's fairly limited. The guy's been fighting fairly low-level competition in the UFC thus far, and what we've seen is basically if you stand in front of him and just let him jab you to death and get combinations off, he looks great. The few times he's had to fight kind of without being able to just put a jab in your face, he hasn't looked good. You look at the Nick Dalby fight, Dalby basically just popped in and out of the pocket all fight and just never really stood stationary there. And he just looked flustered. He didn't really look like he knew what to do if you weren't directly in front of him. And I expect that to kind of be the case here too. D-Rod's good, but he's plotting and he's slow and he's 34, coming off an injury. Kevin Holland, look, it's funny because it seems like now everybody wants to fade Kevin Holland when the time to fade Kevin Holland was when he was minus 180 against Derek Brunson. That was the time. Kevin Holland gets a lot of shit because he's a goof, but he's a pretty good striker. He manages distance pretty well. He hits hard. He's explosive. He's fast. And to his credit, his defensive wrestling has looked much, much, much better in his last couple fights. He's very clearly taking it seriously and improving. And in the context of this fight, we literally saw. Now, I will say D-Rod's obviously better than Tim Means at this juncture in their careers, but we saw Holland against Means last fight, and Means is a great jabber as well, and he basically took their jab entirely away in that fight. I don't think he's going to have much issue doing that with Rodriguez here. Holland historically is very hard to hit to the head, which again, that tends to be Rodriguez's targeted choice. I just think he's going to pretty much do whatever he wants at range here. He's faster, he's bigger, he's way more athletic, he hits harder, he's more explosive. I think he's going to get off a lot more volume than Rodriguez is, and I think Rodriguez is going to have a ton of issues closing the distance. I don't really think there's a grappling path available for Rodriguez. I know people hype up, his black belt from the hell is it called? What is the 10th Planet? My God, I can't believe I slipped that. But I haven't really seen anything to make me think he has, really plus or even really average grappling. I actually think Holland has more grappling upside in this fight than Rodriguez does. Yeah, ultimately the problem is I don't think Rodriguez is going to have many opportunities to finish the fight, and I just really struggle to see how he competes on minutes consistently in this fight. Holland's 28 and clearly improving. Rodriguez is 34 off an injury. I think it's a great matchup for Holland here. Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Holland kicks his ass personally, to be honest with you. I think he's much faster on the feet. I think the diversity of the attacks on the feet, mixing into the kicks, just the long nature of Kevin Holland in general, I think it's just going to be an issue for Rodriguez. Kind of like what you mentioned. I feel like Rodriguez's win path is sort of like a close, weird decision because I don't think his chances of knocking out Holland are that high. I think Holland knocking him out is actually pretty live, to be completely honest with you. I think the speed difference is pretty big here.
Luke?
I'm a huge fan of both guys. I love both guys. I'm a huge Holland truther. I'm a huge D-Rod truther. And so going in, when I looked at the line, I'm like, what the fuck? D-Rod's plus 170 in this fight? I'm like, you got to be out of your mind against Kevin. And then I went back and I watched a little bit more tape. I'm like, yeah, no, no, not at all. And I think you brought up a really good point, John. And that was kind of one of my main benchmarks in going back and watching this fight. It's Dalby, right? Because if you watch the guys that have fought D-Rod, and even in relation to where D-Rod has had success, even on the outside, it was a guy like Dalby who fought in a more bouncing, type of game that gave him problems. Even Dwight Grant from the outside, from some perspective, gave him some issues, almost fucking finished him, right? And so my thing with Holland is one, I think Holland's a mythical creature at 170. I know this is a 180 catch weight. I get it. But I think Holland down in general at 170 is a mythical creature. He's going to be bigger than every single guy he's fought. He's the biggest guy that D-Rod's fought to date. And I think he's also the best defensive striker that D-Rod has fought to date, who's also much quicker. Where I've loved D-Rod is just general, obviously, with his volley. Dude's just going to throw. Guy throws 18 distance strikes per minute, which is fucking crazy. But the reality is he's fighting a guy in Holland who you're not going to sit there and get volume off on for free. Like you ain't getting volume off on for free against Kevin Holland, right? And I think it's the hooks, right? The hooks of D-Rod are his primary best tool. But the primary best tool of Holland is the straights. And just general base, throw everything out the window, handicapping for 2 seconds. Give me straights versus hooks every single day of the week. Straights will beat hooks. Why? Just physiologically. It's faster. It's to the target. It's better. It's more accurate, right? And obviously we've seen D-Rod hurt before too at the same time. So it's one of those scenarios where I'm not saying just because Holland has finished in his last outings and D-Rod has largely been durable throughout his career, and that's actually been one of his, more shining points. I think Holland puts him down. I think for D-Rod to have success, he's obviously going to have to throw that volume, but that's going to open him up to the counters and the straights of Kevin Holland at the same time. So I do think Holland puts him down in this spot.
Yeah, and it's like you talked about the straight shots. It's like, and then layer on top of that the speed difference and the length that D-Rod has to deal with as well. It's just, Holland's huge for 170, So, yeah, I'm with you guys. I might bet him. I'm hoping the line comes in a bit more, but I'm considering it. Moving on, co-main event. This is a pretty interesting fight. We got Jingliang, the Leech. He's taking on Tony Ferguson. What do you guys think? Lags?
I guess I'll start off. To be honest with you, I was really hoping they were going to make like a Tony versus Nate fight, because I think Tony's completely done, to be completely honest with you. I think returning this soon off of that brutal knockout up a weight class is just bad news against the super big hitter in Lee. So to me, I feel like Lee, fairly large favorite, makes sense to me.
How about you, Luke?
I'm kind of with Legs too. It's always one of these difficult spots for me from a handicapping perspective, because honestly, if you just said like X's and O's wise, skill for skill, Jingliang is not 75% over Tony Ferguson. Not a fucking chance. Like zero. Like he's not 75% over Tony Ferguson. But the guy's coming off of getting brutally knocked out of a weight class. Always been kind of an interesting character. On the back end of his career, hasn't won a fight in years. It seems like kind of the writing's on the wall, but it's also hard for me to like completely throw out the fact that even in the Chandler fight, it's not like, oh, he got knocked out in 2 minutes. Like, no, the guy actually went out there and won the first round unanimously off of Michael Chandler, right? Like he did. Like, so it's not like the guy can't do anything anymore. It's just like, to me, it's a spot thing. And that's why you're seeing the line creep. I'm not saying to bet Ferguson, but I'm just going to be honest. Like gun to my head, I would bet Tony from a money line perspective. Like I couldn't lay 300 on Leech. The Leech has been dropped 5 times in the UFC. He's been submitted twice in the UFC. He hasn't been the overt most consistent minute winner. He's gotten into a lot of brawls. Overall, Tony Ferguson historically thrives in the brawls. It's just where Tony Ferguson is at. So it's like it's one of those kind of weird spots where I think, yeah, you have to favor the more youthful fighter on a consistent streak. It's harder, up weight class. I think you have to do that. But the spot I'd be looking more to is just general fight-based violence at a decent number.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to play Tony here, to be honest. Just like I obviously played him against Chandler, and like I'm not some kind of Tony Ferguson truther. I faded him in his 3 fights prior to the Chandler fight. The thing is, like, if you look at the fights that he lost, in particular the Oliveira and Benny fights, they were via grappling, and that's why I bet both those guys, because like one of the most open secrets out there for years was that when Tony Ferguson gets taken down, he plays guard, and if you can avoid getting subbed there, he's fairly easy to control on the mat. But like, is Jingliang have a grappling path here? Like he could land takedowns, but I kind of think if he goes into Tony's guard, like there's a it's a very dangerous proposition for him. Like Lee is the kind of person that could get subbed from guard by Tony here. And so I'm not worried about that threat in the way that I had been, and for the reasons I faded him. And so it's like, is Li Jingliang a minus 300 favorite in a striking fight against Tony Ferguson? It's possible he is at this point that Tony's so far gone. But like, I thought Tony looked fine at 55 against Chandler on the feet, to be honest. You know, maybe a little
Chandler
slower.
hits hard too.
Yeah, exactly. And like maybe he was a tad slower than he had been in the past, but he was still stringing combinations together just fine. He obviously hurt Chandler in that fight. I mean, even if you go back to the Gaethje fight, I thought his stand up looked fine there too. He just fought. Gaethje had a perfect game plan. He checked all his kicks and he boxed him up. You know, Lee has always been very defensively open. The guy gets wobbled just about every single fight, and so like I look at it and I'm just like, man, if this goes 15 minutes, like Ferguson's probably going to put out more volume, you know? Very, very, very strong chance that Ferguson lands more strikes here. And with that dynamic, it's like, can he be this number? Like the one thing that really makes me nervous about it and why I haven't bet it and why I may not, or I may, I don't know, is the weight. Like going up to 170, he's probably facing a different level of power than he's faced at 155, different level of physicality with Leach. Obviously, Leach is in fairly good form right now, and so that is a concern. It's like 38 years old. He was viciously knocked out by Chandler 4 months ago, and it's pretty quick turnaround off of it. But like even with that dynamic, I just keep thinking about it. Like it's not. We're 2 years removed from everybody and their mother going to back Leach as a favorite against Neil Magny, and then watching in horror as Magny outstruck him 3-1 at distance. You know, like I just like think about that and I'm like, would you really be blown away if he doesn't knock Ferguson out, if Ferguson just volumes him up and takes over the fight late? Like, would that be a shocking outcome? I don't think so, because like skill for skill, it's certainly not Lee minus 300, especially since we know, Lee's not a wrestler. He may wrestle, but like I said, I don't think he's going to be safe if he wrestles here. And so it's just a question of like, do I want to back a guy who's maybe washed, coming off, one of the worst KOs we've seen in recent memory? And not really, but like if it gets out to plus 300, I think I might take a poke at it here. I think that for me would be like, I feel as if the lower end of where Tony could be capped here is around 30 to 35%. It would be hard for me to believe he'd be past that unless his durability is just completely fucked. But I don't think he's off that bad KO. But like, again, that KO wasn't indicative of his durability being gone. That was indicative of getting kicked directly in the face. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's an interesting case for Tony here. I think people are jumping way too quickly to pile in on the Tony's wash train after they all bet him against Charles Oliveira and Betty Dariush. And I do think he's washed, but I think stylistically it's an interesting fight. But with that said, I don't have a bet. Like I said, I'm thinking about it, but I don't know.
Real quick, John. I think what's an interesting dynamic for me in terms of like fight violence and why I stayed off of it in the last fight with Chandler is just like, it's real weird because like in terms of like Tony's durability, like we kind of saw a TKO obviously from the Gaethje fight, and then obviously the front kick in the Chandler fight. But like in terms of like going out like from like a straight shot, like I don't know. It's just weird. Like it's weird to me. Like I wouldn't be confident in violence. Like I don't think the durability is like so bad. I just think the defense isn't really there.
But like so you say that, but it's like if it's not confident in violence here, then can Leach be minus 300? Because Tony's going to land a lot of strikes in this fight. Like I can promise you that. Like if you go 15 minutes, he's going to land. He's going to land more strikes. To be honest, So I don't know. It's worth thinking about.
Interesting one for sure.
Anyway, we move on to the main event that nobody wanted, but we're here. I guess people are fired up about it. We have Khamzat Chimaev taking on Nate Diaz. I'd much rather have Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor 3 than this, to be honest. I think most of us would. Does anybody really want to see this fight? The UFC pretty clearly throwing Khamzat a bone and trying to make him a star, and then hopefully, if the UFC's lucky, Leon beats Usman again, and they can give him the Leon. But Yeah, I don't know. I don't love this main event. What do you think, Luke?
No, I'm just kidding. You guys know in this podcast I'm a Diaz truther. I love these boys. Been fans of them forever. But yeah, this is definitely the changing of the guard type of perspective. The only slight argument I will make for Nate here is that I should say two slight arguments I'll make for Nate here is that Chimaev felt like a dipshit against Burns, right? Burns humanized him, right? I mean, this guy couldn't be beat. He couldn't take shots. He couldn't get hurt. He couldn't get taken down. I mean, Burns humanized him. Burns didn't lose that fight by margin. That's all I'm saying. Why? Because he coaxed him into a brawl. And so, like, if there's some weird outside scenario where Nate can coax him back into that shit, Nate's pretty good in the lip of the pocket, right? Like, he's going to sit there and throw shit. Like, that's all I'm saying. But, and I guess my second point is that Chimaev has never been in a 5-round fight, even though I think the guy's got most likely elite cardio. So that's a very second consideration. But my only like shining moment for potentially Nate is that he can like draw him into a brawl in which he can take away the wrestling, technical, any sort of advantage that Chimaev has. But Chimaev's going to fuck him up. It's just one of those spots, like I said, passing of the guard. Despite me actually like valuing Nate's jiu-jitsu, it's kind of still like old guard jiu-jitsu. Like, I mean, Chimaev is just fucking an animal on top, positional control, far side wrist, top. Like, Nate's not going to be able to do much. My thing is like when Nate's fresh. I guess me and you and I should say me and you, Danny, might disagree with it based on what he tweeted out or what was in that video. Like, is Nate gonna quit though? Is he Nick in that other fight where he's just completely fucking done? Like, very real chance it is the case. But like, Nate just doesn't strike me as the guy who's just gonna like sit there and like just roll over. Right. It might not matter though. Like, he might be completely fucking locked in. It doesn't matter. And Chimaev just fucking kills him anyway. That's why I think the over is just a little interesting at like ever so slight chalk. Like, Nate's never been finished in 33 pro fights in under 7.5 minutes ever. Right. Definitely could happen here, but I don't know, man. I'm kind of leaning the over that even with like Chimaev kind of fighting like a dummy, I think he might give some respect to Nate on the feet a little bit, might pick and move at him a little bit, extend some minutes. Nate's obviously never been submitted outside of like, I think like Franca back in like 2006 or something like that. I don't know. My take is more so I think Nate might be able to hold on here for 7.5 minutes in comparison to other people. I think he might be able to do it, but yeah, Hamzat, I do think ultimately finishes him on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really. I'm not betting it. Let me just like start with that up front. Certainly, but like, I can't argue with Hamzat being a big favorite. I do kind of think, Luke, you mentioned that Burns humanized him, but you'd never really know it from looking at social media this week, where people like look at that fight and you would think, this guy just showed his championship material when he fought a gassy lightweight who is historically fragile. Looked like an underdog, so he dropped him at the end of round 1. Then looked like an underdog, got his ass kicked in round 2, and basically edged out round 3 while Burns was like half dead and gassed out. I guess he's still the chosen one after that. People are still acting like that. I think Chimaev is obviously massively talented. Don't get me wrong. But I think that Burns' performance showed that there's some real flaws in his game. In particular, he had zero striking defense whatsoever. He did show that his cardio, I don't know if it's poor or if he just doesn't manage it well, but either way, he does not have elite cardio. I will say he fights through it well, for sure. He obviously kept coming in the Burns fight despite being dead tired. But, he showed that both of those attributes are pretty worrying. In the context of this fight, can Nate take advantage of them? Yeah, maybe. Like, the thing is, like, early in this fight, there's pretty much he's going to be able to do whatever he wants to Nate, right? Like, that's the if Chimaev is intelligent, like if he's actually fights a very intelligent fight, he's going to not use much pace at all. He's going to lock him up in the clinch, take him down, consolidate position, hold him there, and do that. He can probably do that for 25 minutes, no problem at all. If he comes out the way he's come out in every other fight and comes out guns blazing with the intent of getting him out of there in a minute for the first 2 rounds of this fight, he may get him out of there. Look, Nate can't defend takedowns. Never, even at his best, he couldn't defend takedowns. Chimaev's going to get dominant positions in this fight, and there is a high probability that even if he comes out at 100 miles an hour, that he's going to finish Nate very early in this fight. But if he does that and he doesn't, like, are you going to be like very happy with your Chimaev parlay if we're 10 minutes into the fight, he's throwing 250 strikes and has his hand on his hips and is winded with 3 more rounds to go? It's possible, even if he's dead gassed out, he could just go back to the well, kind of clinch him up, take him down, and lay and pray him. I think that's definitely that. Obviously, I actually think it's likely that would still happen. But, you know, if it gets into that kind of game, Nate's submission game becomes more interesting at that point. If you're completely out of gas and just trying to lay and pray him, and if not, and they end up standing there at the end, then that's a little more interesting too. With that said, I'm just kind of making the broad-based Nate case here. I had thought long and hard about whether or not to bet Nate in this fight. I talked to our boy Jonah, who had said to me, he made actually a very, very good point about this, that Chimaev was just minus 500 and looked even money against a gassy lightweight, and now he's being priced minus 1,500 against a bigger guy than Gilbert Burns. And I agree with that in theory, but I do ultimately think it's just stylistically, it's just so favorable for Chimaev. And, you know, Nate, even though Nate's a somewhat slick boxer, he doesn't really pack power, and he is there to be crushed in the pocket, if we're being honest. So, yeah, I mean, look, I would be if I looked at the end of round 2 and Nate was still alive and Chimaev was visibly gassed out, I would consider live betting him. But I can't get involved pre here. There's just too many. There's too many ways for Chimaev to win this fight, honestly, and the fact that he can basically dictate what happens at any given time just makes it impossible to fade him here. You know, when I faded him with GM3, it was like, well, he's never faced someone who can sweep positions and they challenge him positionally in the way Meerschaert could, and he had never faced someone that hit the way Meerschaert did. Obviously, he knocked Meerschaert out in 10 seconds, but the point being, you know, that was a far more threatening fight for him than Nate is, as was Gilbert Burns. Yeah, I'm passing. Chimaev should wreck him. I think he's probably going to finish him, to be honest. I would like to see a good fight, but with how easy Leon Edwards was getting the dominant positions against Diaz, I think Chimaev probably mounts him pretty quickly in this fight and likely gets him out of there. Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is every bit of a squash match as everybody thinks it is. Personally, I have a unit and a half on the fight doesn't start round 3 at minus 135. I just personally think that's a great price for 10 minutes. I think Hamzat personally kills Nate early. I don't see a ton of Nate hope here personally.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like Luke kind of touched on it briefly, it's like if you're even listening to Nate's interviews, he does not sound like a man who even wants to fight. Like he even basically said he's doing what he has to do to get out of his contract. Like, do we even expect like would anybody be shocked if Nate just tapped to a soft sub early in this fight and just got the fuck out of Dodge?
What I will say is if he does that shit, I'm going to cry like a girl. I'm going to cry like a girl.
Don't cry. He's got the Jake Paul payday coming to him next year. It's I mean, honestly, like that it's funny because not that I ever had any passion behind like, any kind of a Nate bet. I messaged you guys earlier and I was like, Nate ITD could be interesting. And then I watched that interview and it's just like, I'm not an interview guy, but like you're watching it and he just sounds like someone who just does not want to be here. Like really.
He literally sounds like his older brother. Like he sounds like he literally just has this fight. I just need money.
If Nate soft taps, that will be so like I don't even know what to say. Like that's so
gangster,
antithetical Nate Diaz, like ever. Like
it's just like in addition to, but you know what I mean though. It's like in addition to being like a nightmarish stylistic matchup for him, and come on, like Chimaev style is basically a baseline minus 500 against Nate, right? Just because, he can maybe 5 rounds mitigates that somewhat, but baseline, he's a huge favorite just because he can dictate it. And then you have Nate basically being like, did you prepare for this fight? No, not really. Did you watch tape? No, not really. I got to do what I got to do to get out of my contract. That's literally what he said. That's literally what he said is I have to do what I have to do to get out of the cage. I can't trust money behind that. So I'm rooting for Nate. I want to see it get interesting, but in the same way, like people were trying to like hype up Masvidal against Colby when anybody who had studied that closely kind of knew Colby was going to fucking wreck him here. I kind of think that's what's going to happen here. As much as I love taking my shots in the dark, like this just doesn't seem to be the one, But anyway, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. So that's going to be UFC 279. Next month's card is a fucking banger, and there will be probably lots of bets on that card because we have a lot of lines out for that card already. So it's pretty interesting. And next week's card, I think, is actually pretty interesting as well. I actually think next week's fight night is a better card than this pay-per-view, to be honest. So we'll be back next week, same time, 10 p.m. Eastern time. Guys, if you haven't yet, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd appreciate it. As usual, we got me, John, on Twitter at MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags, and Luke at SWR_betting. Good luck on your bets this weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next week. Later.